Welcome to the Innovators. Each week, we're serving up real talk with badass women. We're dishing out the truth, no fluff, and definitely no BS. Just raw, honest stories and lessons to inspire the next generation. I'm your humble host, Cynthia Nelson, three-time entrepreneur, investor, and advisor. Today, it's a really great pleasure of mine to have Julie Sun join the podcast. She's a standout strategy consultant and downright growth hacker extraordinaire. And of course, hashtag badass. Julie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Badass mama, I gotta
Oh,
say.
badass mama. Okay, well, I stand corrected on this one. So I think the first thing everybody wants to know is like, how did you become a badass? Like, what is your background? How did you become this, sought after strategy consultant for these big companies? Tell me your story.
Well, I mean, I got scars on my back to to get here, that's for sure. I really started my career in SEO when it wasn't even called SEO. It was just, like people trying to figure out the internet. And that kind of got me into the digital sphere when it was all just called new media. And I worked for publishing and media
Yep.
businesses, primarily large corporations there. And then I hopped over to startup world and did a lot of growth and both organic and paid growth there. And then after that, between the startup world with completely different problems than the large corporates, I realized that I had the experience and the knowledge expertise to kind of see both sides. And then also being a marketer, but in the media business, I also kind of get to see, um, I get to see both sides of the table, right? For both media buyers as well as media sellers. So I know the game. So it really does help me in advising companies on their marketing strategies and ultimately how to leverage the money that they have to grow.
Yeah, and I know we always had this conversation of like, if I can't spend $1 and get you more dollars than that, then I need to get fired kind of thing. Like you go in with a very specific kind of, hey, I know what works and what doesn't work. Just follow along the bouncing ball of Julie's son and you will get there. And that's experience though, right? That's like you can't say those things unless you've been in this business. Like you said, new media. I haven't heard somebody say new media in like a really long time. So I know that's
So in
going.
my age.
Yeah, yeah, it's going way back.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and a lot of this is not just like, I've got 20 years of experience kind of thing with this world, with this area. It's really all about learning and it's all about kind of staying ahead and actually one step ahead of the competition in terms of leveraging whatever competitive unfair advantage you have, right, as an
Okay.
organization. And sometimes that's the fact that you are the 800-pound gorilla in the marketplace when you're a large corporate. Sometimes with startups, it's your innovation. Sometimes it's the position of the marketplace. Sometimes it's data, right? It all just depends on the situation and the place and time that we're in.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you've been doing this a long time and nobody does anything by themselves, right? So it's like, what's the most valuable piece or pieces of advice you've ever gotten? And did you have mentors along the way?
Oh yeah, I'm got plenty of mentors. I'd say I think of mentors as more like really, partners in crime in a lot of ways, in that, a lot of the things that to get that competitive advantage that we have to have in this space. It's all about learning across the organization.
Yeah.
So my mentors are a lot of times not a marketer. A lot of times they're the product lead, they are the data leads, they are the CEOs of businesses that are maybe 1 or 2 degrees outside of the core business that I'm in. And what they do is they give me a very different perspective and help me think of how to solve this problem effectively and efficiently. And most importantly, differently than everybody else. And what that does is it helps me look at the problem in a completely different way. And those I would consider my mentors. Yes.
I mean, that's very a holistic way of thinking about business strategy and marketing, which I think a lot of people just like, okay, marketing. advertising does this, marketing does this, media does this, but it's all of those things together, and it's not one thing is is
Absolutely.
the silver bullet, right? Like, and if you don't have the perspective from operations, tech, product, the CEO, C-suite, what they're trying to do, whether they're, a Fortune 100 and the stock market has to do this and their investors are looking like, if you don't have all those answers, and again, like you said, mentors in different areas, you're going to come up with a strategy that's lopsided sometimes or doesn't have all the pieces in place to help them make the best decisions for the business. That's very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I mean, marketing, the way I like to think about marketing, right, is that its job is to provide air coverage for the entire business. It is not just to buy ads. It is not just, right, to build creative. It's not just to come up with a tagline. And like you said, if you don't take into consideration the business's entirety
Yeah,
and what is both its immediate goals and long-term visions, you end up, well, the business end up getting stunted in their growth, right? You might have a small burst of, or you might build something that's just really not sustainable over
right,
time. So
right.
it's really about trying to understand what you're working with what you have, and being scrappy and creative,
Yeah,
right? And innovative with all that's kind of around you, and really look at the situation in a different way.
yeah. And I think coming from the outside, sometimes it's a little easier to do than
Yeah,
being inside.
absolutely.
Being innovative sometimes is that's why they bring people like you in to be innovative and to think differently because everybody's got their own jobs and they're busy 70 hours a week and they're really focused on, their goal, their personal goals and objectives and that of their group. But when you come in from the outside, you can bring a different level of perspective to it, which is sometimes annoying for people and sometimes super refreshing. And they're so glad, like, oh my God, this is so great. Someone's here. Save us.
Fresh perspective is key, and what I'm really good at, and I genuinely enjoy doing, is solving really hard and difficult business problems. And when I get, by being a consultant, I actually get the opportunity, right, to actually come in with fresh eyes and go, well, have we thought about it in this way and that way? Which again, if you are in the weeds, and this is not just like I'm not better than anybody else per
Right.
se. It's more that you're in that position and playing the role that you're playing, right?
Right.
So I get to play this kind of outfielder
Right.
that comes in and really can look at the game in a very different angle.
Yeah, it's true. Um, You speaking of kind of marketers or CMOs, like what do you think their biggest challenge is today? And how is AI impacting that? It's kind of two-parter.
Wow. Well, I mean, AI is a challenge in itself, right? Because everybody wants to use it. It's one of those things that's, everybody wants it. Everybody thinks they have it, but really nobody has it. Nobody can get to it, because I think the biggest challenge for marketers is data. It's really about, there are a lot of organizations out there that is hoarding a lot of data, or
Yeah,
they're sitting a lot on a lot of data that frankly is just not actionable, or it's not yielding any the insights that they really need to make decisions in a scientific way, or being able to act based off of that data that's coming in fast enough. And a
right.
lot of that is the way that data is structured, the way the data is modeled, and also the way data is feeding into your LLMs, right? So these are all the things that is a challenge for Mark. Everybody wants to wield this thing, but this thing is so big and difficult and cumbersome
Yeah.
and labor intensive to do. You got to make sure that this is why you got to build partners with tech, build partners with product, and really think outside of the box and thinking about how you can solve whatever the business challenges may be.
Yeah. I think you're right. It is unwieldy. It is unwieldy and kind of shit in, shit out. So, like learning how to use them the right way, right? And learning how to extract data and using AI for it, I think it's a big challenge. I think also, and you can, comment to this, of course, it's people or marketers seem to be, and maybe it's overblown, up in arms about, oh, it's going to replace me in my writing, it's going to replace my creativity, it's here to take my job. Like, what's your take on that?
Well, AI on its own really has no substance, right? So when you ask AI to write you an ad copy, or you ask AI to give you a creative, they can give you something that's kind of a good base to work off of. But really, it's the marketer, it's the strategist, is the person that really understand what is that angle, what is that value proposition, what is the thing that I'm ultimately trying to hone in on that differentiates me than the rest of the marketplace, right? And yes, you can put it in to this AI system that helps you optimize against that target, that helps you um, jazz it up per se, right? But really, it still is up to the marketer to say strategically, this is how you should be positioned, and here's how you describe yourself in a way that's gonna win. It's not just I'm able to. Anybody can generate a description, right? Anybody can generate an ad, and AI is really good at that. Again, that's all good. We should use it because heck, that machine writing copy is a hell of a lot faster than me having copywriters do it. But
Yeah.
ultimately, we have to be the ones to go in there and
Hey,
define
yeah.
what is ultimately the key message I'm trying to
Right.
convey? Is that coming through? And if is it coming through in the clearest and most effective and efficient way? And sorry, AI, like
Yeah.
that's still a human job.
Yeah, I agree with you. Let's switch a little bit to kind of CEOs and corporate. What do you think they're most worried about? Kind of what keeps them up at night? If you were a CEO, it doesn't matter if it's a startup or a, big corporation, like what do you think is keeping them up at night?
I mean, I think scalability is a piece that is tied to a lot of the little bursts of innovation, right? And these places where we find little nuggets of efficiency. So or even paid, right? Like I put $100,000 in here. Now it's doing great. Now, if I put $200,000, is it going to get me the same yield? Right. And then what about $300,000? So you're constantly upping that and then worried about its like when is the when is the tap going to run out,
Right.
right? So I think scalability is definitely an area for a marketer to recognize, like, because you're always hedging your bets, right? So
Always,
that's
always.
definitely one area. And then a lot of FOMO, I think, of like there is a lot of AI talk. There's a lot of like bragging because it is the industry. You gotta like toot your own horn, right? And so there is a lot of envy of like, oh, so and so, like somebody else. I read about this. Could we do? And that could feed some insecurities, and I can see that keeping people up at night.
Yeah.
Um, but slow and steady wins the race. No matter what, with when it comes to marketing investments and
Yeah.
strategies.
Last question, but the most important one I always think. What would you say to your 25-year-old self? What advice would you give?
Oh God, buy Amazon stocks.
Besides buying Amazon stock or Microsoft or Spotify.
A few of them.
Yeah.
Get into stocks early. Yeah. What would I tell myself? I mean, I would say, be patient. Patience is a virtue. I think um there's a lot that, I saw. There's a lot of things that I saw coming, and I was very anxious in wanting that change faster than perhaps the organization that I'm with at the time is capable of metabolizing.
Yeah.
And that fed myself, a lot of angst and frustration, which
Frustration. Yeah. I get it.
clearly, and this is part of the reason why I'm a consultant is that, I recognize like my ability to solve problems and find answers may sometimes be faster than an organization's ability to absorb it. And
Yeah.
that's perfectly fine,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't mean that it went to waste. It just takes more time for perhaps one organization to arrive at the finish line than another. Hey, if they can afford it and this is the process, there's nothing wrong with that. And I think my younger self probably would have not accepted that as the answer.
No, I mean that's the total badass answer, right? A personality and simply when you're seeing around the corners, it's like you see the bleeding edge, you're like, no, no, we really have to be there. And everybody's like, yeah, yeah, it's really great. Thanks so much. Thanks so much. Yeah, we'll get to you later. Julie, it's been really great having you on the podcast. I appreciate it. And how do people get a hold of you to secure those amazing skills that you have? What's your email?
JulieYsun@gmail.com. That's
Like,
as easy as it gets.
awesome.
Um, yeah, and they, they can always reach out to you too, Cynthia.
Yeah,
If
and you're on LinkedIn. You're a heavy hitter on LinkedIn too. So
I'm on LinkedIn as well. So yeah, I don't post all of the clients that I have on my profile for obvious reasons, but
yeah,
yes, definitely find me on LinkedIn. Of
awesome. Julie, thank you so much.
course.